Hi, everyone. It's Michelle at IconCMO. I want to welcome you to today's webinar. It looks like there's still a few people getting signed in, but we'll go ahead and get started. Today's webinar is going to be a new user training for the system. So we're going to be going through basically the things that you don't know that you need to know to get started in the system, if that makes sense at all. So just a quick introduction. Again, my name is Michelle. I do sales and marketing and customer training here at IconCMO. And so my job today is just to give you a quick tour through the software. And then we're also going to be having more webinars. We're going to do one a month for live webinars. So the next one will be in June, and that'll be on membership. And we'll go a little bit more in depth with membership module training here. And then July will be contributions. August will be fund accounting setup. September will be fund accounting operations, so day-to-day things like check writing and whatnot. And then that puts us into October, will be payroll. And so we'll be sending out the registration links for those ahead of time too. So you'll be able to register for those for more trainings as well. And then from time to time, we have live webinars with our partners that talk about the integrations as well. So I know we have a couple of those coming up too. Yeah, so welcome. I appreciate you being here today. Just a little bit about IconCMO for those that are new here. Well, let me get a show of hands. So on your GoToWebinar control panel, there's a little button that you can raise your hand. So if you are a brand new user on the system, like maybe only been working on it for a couple of months, go ahead and raise your hand just so that I can see who all of my brand new users are. Like maybe you've logged in, poked around a little bit. Okay, good. We got a lot of brand new people. Perfect. Yeah, so we'll make sure to cover some very basics for you today. All right, I'm going to put your hands down. And who are my users that have been on the system for a while and you just wanted to sneak in and see if you could learn some tips and tricks to use the system? Go ahead and raise your hand. Awesome. There's a lot of names that I recognize on here, so yeah, that's awesome. Well, welcome. I'm going to go ahead and put everybody's hands down now. Just because we have a lot of people on the webinar today, instead of asking questions during the call, what I'm going to do is wait until at the end. I don't anticipate this taking the full hour. Usually when I do onboarding trainings, it takes half an hour, sometimes less, just depending on what we need to set up. So you shouldn't take the full hour, but that means that we have time for questions at the end as well. So if you do have a question, feel free to type it in the question box. I'm not going to even look at it until the end, so feel free to just either save it or type it right away and I'll get to it later. If you're asking a question that is relevant to everybody, and it'll be helpful, I'll go ahead and answer it right on the webinar here. If you've got something that's maybe a little bit more of a specific situation to your church or a little bit more off topic, what I'll do is I'm just gonna save those questions and I'll have your name and email after the webinar, and so I'll just send you a follow-up email. So either way, we'll make sure that we get your questions answered here. Awesome. So before we dive in, I'm going to do a little bit of a company history here. Let me get my screen sharing up. There we go. So you should be able to see my screen now. All right, so IconCMO, the company was founded back in 1992. And that wasn't even Windows-based software then. I believe it was DOS. It was going way back. It was called Revelations, and some of you might have been on Revelations and have since transitioned over to IconCMO. So you all are on our IconCMO platform right now. And that's the system that we're going to be going through today. So we'll go ahead and pop over. I have a test database open, and this one is filled with fake names and fake financials, so we can actually poke around in there. And we're not going to get too much into report running today, but there might be a little bit of things that you'll see in there. So a couple things just about the basic security of the system and how access works and everything like that. So as far as security goes, I actually have a security document. Where did I bring it up here? I'm going to switch my screen sharing over to this. There we go. All right. So, and if you ever need a copy of this too, just feel free to email us and we can send it as an attachment. But as far as security goes, we take security very seriously. So all information that you send back and forth is encrypted. I know sometimes the cloud sounds like this big, scary, not sure what it is thing. And all that really means is that your data and the software is hosted on our servers, which are just really big computers, right? And so instead of having a server at the church or have everything local on a laptop or a desktop at the church, everything is on our servers and you access it online through the internet. And so everything that you're sending back and forth to our servers is encrypted. Our servers, we maintain our own servers. We don't rent server space from Amazon or Google or anything like that. They are our own servers. They're housed in a secure server facility. And we actually did have a third-party company come in and audit the security on our servers, and the guy that came in said that they were actually more secure than some of the online banking systems he's audited. So good for us. A little concerned about some online banking systems, but you can rest assured that we make sure that everything is compliant and safe and secure. And then we do make backups every night of your database. I think it runs around like 3 a.m. Central Time or something in there. Hopefully you're all sleeping then, unless we do have a couple of clients in Europe and Australia and things like that. But sometime in the middle of the night, it'll automatically back up your database. And so if you ever have a problem, something happened and you need to restore your database, you can just reach out to our support team and we will be able to help you with that and restore your data. And if you ever need to make a backup as well, you can always go in the system and manually make a backup too if you're not sure you're going to do something. But if you're not sure on something, it'd probably be best to just call our support team anyway, and we'll make sure that you're doing the right thing. All right, so that being said, flipping back to the software here. How that works then is accessing everything online is every single user, so every staff member or volunteer at the church is going to have their own username and password to access the database. And whoever the administrator is, whether that's yourself or somebody else, will be able to adjust the security settings for each user. So for example, if you've got maybe like a membership secretary or a volunteer, or sometimes even pastors will need access to the names and contact information, notes, attendance, that sort of a thing, but they don't necessarily need to see the financials and know who gave what, then they'll be able to access that. And vice versa, if you've got maybe like someone on a board or a committee, that sort of a thing, and they need to come in and run reports and audit the financials, but they don't necessarily need to make any transactions or post anything, they'll be able to do that as well. And so that's actually going to be the first thing that we're doing, is going through how to add a user and how to edit the security settings. So once you get logged in, on your menu on the left-hand side, you're going to go to the System tab. And under Security, we have 2 windows. There's Membership and Fund Accounting. And we'll be going to both of them, so we'll start in Membership. And the membership side of the security is going to cover basically the top part of the menu. So organization, people, contributions. And then once we get to the fund accounting, window, I just want to do a quick check here. Can everybody see my screen? Can you just type in the question box and make sure that you can see my screen? I'm getting yeses. Okay, perfect. Thank you. If you can't see my screen, just double check. It might be minimized or hiding behind a different window. If you go to your taskbar at the bottom, it's like an orange flower symbol is the GoToWebinar control panel. So you might just need to click on that and pop it up. Sometimes they're hiding behind another window somewhere. Okay, back on track. So system security membership. So to add a new user, all you need to do is come to this window and type in a username. Now, you might have to do a little bit of thinking here to get it just right. It has to be at least 6 letters long. It can't be any longer than 8. So if you've got a role that changes over frequently in the church, it might be helpful to use either their title or an abbreviation of their title, like pastor or financial secretary or treasurer, so that if you get a new person, you can just update the password and possibly the email address and hand it off to the next person without having to set up all of the security again. Or if it is somebody, that's a little bit more long-term, you can do an abbreviation of their name. So again, depending on how long people's names are, some people have super short names, some people have longer names. You could do first name, last initial, or first initial, last name. If that's still not long enough, you might have to do first, middle initials, last name. You can kind of play around with it. So we'll add one in here for a financial secretary. We'll do FinSec. And then you'll be able to set up a password for them. I just like putting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or something easy. Once they get logged in, they'll be able to update their password. Please, once you get logged in, update your password to something secure that nobody else knows. And then type in their email address. And once you have that set up, oh, and I will mention this too. So the email address, it's important that everybody has their own email address. Obviously for security reasons, you don't want somebody getting access to somebody else's password, but also for password reset is what it's mostly for. So you want to make sure that you'll have access to this email address in case you get locked out of the system. We can send you a password reset link, or you can even request it yourself from the website, and then we can get you back into the system. And so you want to make sure if you ever change your email address as well, that you update this in the system so that you don't get locked out and it's going to an old email address. And then when you're done, just click Save an Email User. They are now going to get an email in their inbox that says, hey, here are your IconCMO credentials with the church's phone number, their username and password. They can tuck that away for safekeeping. And then from here, you'll want to adjust the security settings. So by default, they'll have read-write access to pretty much everything under organization, people, and then the contributions tabs. And like we were talking about before, you can update their access. So there are 3 different types of access. There's read-write. That means that they can see everything in that window, and they can also make changes to it. So they can delete things, save things. There's also, if I just click on this access type, it'll cycle through. There's also a read-only, and that's more of an audit level access. So they can see everything in the window, but they can't make any changes to it. So if they can run reports, things like that, but they can't actually edit any information or delete things. And then lastly, there's no access. So if they have that for a particular window, they open it up and it just says, I'm sorry, you don't have permission to access this form. All right. So how this works then, you see a bunch of lines as I scroll here through the security settings window, is we call them breadcrumbs. So back on your menu, we've got these black, dark gray, and light gray bars. So for example, we look at this line here. Let me move it to the top. We've got organization preferences, church membership. So if we're like, does somebody need access to the window? I'm not sure what's even in that window. We can go back up to our menu and click on organization. And under preferences, we'll pull up church membership. And so this window is where there's a lot of settings. You can update some of the default values in the system, also contents of the drop-down list throughout the membership module, phone and email types, special event types, that sort of a thing. So not everybody at the church will probably need access to this. You want to make sure that the people who do need access to it do. So you can always follow those breadcrumbs to see which windows those are in the menu. And then just to make it a little bit easier, so you can obviously go line by line and change the access type on here. That gets a little bit tedious if you're doing a lot of it. So on the right-hand side, you can do entire chunks of the menu at a time. So like if I wanted to change the contributions module for this particular user, and this is probably a bad example because this is the financial secretary. They might actually need access to the financials. I should have done a attendance volunteer or something like that, but you get the idea of it. So contributions, so here's all of my contribution sections of the menu. We are no longer looking at any of the settings under organization or any of the people module. And I can choose an access level. So read, write, read only, or no access. So if I flip that to no access and click assign access level, it's gonna flip all of those lines to no access for me. And then I can go ahead and save when I'm done. And there is another little checkbox under here that says allow user to view emails sent from other users. That's kind of up to you. So there are a couple places where you can see email history because you can send emails right out of the database. And you can always see the emails that you sent. If the user has that box checked, they can also see emails that other users have sent out of the system. So if you're just sending out newsletters and things like that, probably no big deal. If you've got a pastor or somebody sending out more sensitive information, you might not want to have everybody with access to that. If you are emailing out the contribution statements, those are handled a little bit differently. The body of those emails is always hidden. So you're not going to be able to look up contribution information unless you specifically have access to that module. Awesome. So then if we needed to give the same user, so they've got access under the people and contribution, well, we took away the contribution side, we can go ahead and give it back so they've got access. And if they also needed access to the general ledger, banking, AR, AP, we would go back to system security and this time fund accounting. And a lot of times this gets missed when people are setting up new users. They forget to come to the fund accounting window and give them access to this tab. And if we go to our current user tab, we've already got our financial secretary put in here. And there's no access to any of these forms yet. So again, this is general ledger, banking, AR, AP, payroll. And so on the right side, we can choose if we want full access to everything. We just do all forms, read, write. And when I click assign access level, it'll just flip all of those over to read, write for me. And we're done. Now, one window to be mindful of in here is under system security, fund accounting. It's this top line here. Now, this is a little bit meta because this is the window that we're in right now, right? System security, fund accounting. So if a user has read-write access to this window, they can do what we're doing right now. They can add users, they can delete users, and they can manage the security settings for users, including for themselves. So it's important to at least give 2 people administrative access as far as we're concerned, having read-write access to the security windows as administrative privileges. You want to at least have 2 people so that if somebody is unexpectedly available for whatever reason, you've got a backup person that can adjust things and get you in the system. But you also don't want to give everybody read-write access to the security because that defeats the purpose of having security permissions, right? So you'll want to have a conversation in the church and decide who the system administrators are going to be and set them up with the read-write access, and they can add users, remove users if people leave the church, and adjust everything. And so same thing for the membership window then. If we toggle back there, there's a line for system security membership. And so if somebody has access to that, they've got administrative privileges to this window. Okay, so now we get to cover more into training and support. And while I'm still in this window, I actually want to show you a really cool resource. So not just in the security windows, but in any window that you're in Icon, there's going to be this little help button in the top left-hand corner. And what that does is if you click on it, it'll bring you to the support forum, but it brings you directly to the post that contains the documentation for that particular window. So you'll see at the top here, it says System Security Membership. So if you come here to this window and you're like, okay, I need to add a user. I don't remember exactly how Michelle said to do it on the webinar. Click on the help button and oh, look, here's a video showing you how to add a user. So the main windows in the system will have videos accompanying them. Some of them just have text documentation. And so it'll give you all of the instructions and information about those windows. So that's really helpful to have access to those, especially if you're working on an evening or a weekend and we're not around, or if you're like myself and want to try to find an answer somewhere online before you have to call or email. That's a really good resource. And if you're not sure even what window to start in, you can go ahead and just open up the support forum. You can also access it from the help button in the top right-hand corner. There's just a little line that says visit our support forum, and that'll get you there as well. And there's a little search box in the top right-hand corner that says search by phrase or post number. And that kind of works like Google or whatever search engine. So if you just have a couple of keywords about what you're looking for, it'll pull up relevant topics. So if we're looking for member transfer, it'll bring up posts like this. So like transfer or move a member from one household to another. And here are step-by-step instructions. So it's really good for that, especially if you have how-to questions. There's a very good chance that one of our customers has previously answered that question and we've answered it in the support forum. If you can't find an answer in the support forum, you can always post a new question, or this is also a good place for suggestions. If there's a feature or a report or something that you'd like to see in the system, you can post a suggestion in here and we'll pass it along to our developers to take into consideration. And there are also, if you just want to go straight to all of the videos, if you click on the videos tab at the top, this is going to be all of the training videos that are listed in here as well. And you can always as well, I don't know if I can link to it directly from here, but if you just go to youtube.com/IconCMO, oh, this is probably going to automatically play. I'll catch it. There we go. youtube.com/IconCMO is our YouTube channel, and we've got a ton of training videos on here and recorded training webinars as well, previous webinars or ones we've done with our partners. So that's a really good place. You can get lost on the YouTube rabbit hole too, as far as training goes. All right, flipping back to the system then, another resource that goes along really well with the training videos is in the top right-hand corner when you're logged in, if you click on the Getting Started button. And these are the setup guides. So if you're not just a brand new user to the system, but especially if you're a new customer and you're starting with a brand new database from scratch and it hasn't been set up yet, these are going to be your best friends. If you are a new user and everything's already set up, you're taking over a role from somebody that's previously been there or joining a team on a church, these can still be really helpful because what they do is they walk through how to set up the system step by step. So even if it's already set up for you, it's kind of nice to understand the train of thought and see how everything got set up in the database structure in the first place. So even though you don't have to actually follow the steps, it's nice to go through those. And then there'll be things that are really handy references in there. So for example, like how to add a new household. And these are all clickable links. So like if I click on them, they'll go right to that section in the setup guide. So if you need to add a new household, things like handling deceased people, transferring. We were just searching for that in the support forum, how to transfer a member from one household to another. A lot of times situations like that happen if you have two members that get married or separated or divorced, or a lot of times there's an adult child that moves out of the parent's household is another really common situation. So these are really great resources to just print out. We try to keep them to about 30 pages or fewer. So they're, especially if you have a double-sided printer, they're not going to use a whole ream of paper or anything like that. Print them out, keep them on your desk as a desk reference. You can take notes on them as you watch the videos on YouTube or attend the live training webinars. We'll follow along with these pretty closely. And then, you can refer back to them as you're working in the system. And so there's one for each module. There's a membership setup, contribution setup. There's also a contribution year end. We've mostly automated that, so you probably won't need that one unless that's been shut off. There's a fund accounting setup guide, accounting year end. And then for payroll, there's actually two. There's a payroll setup guide and then a payroll processing guide. And then we also have setup guides for our two online giving integrations with Bambora and Vanco. So if you're just curious about how those integrations work, or if you are using one of those integrations, you can always grab the instructions for importing those donations there. And speaking of that, we'll talk a little bit about integration setup, just for some of the common ones. If you are using Bambora, you should be integrated because they usually email us right away. But if you are a Vanco customer and you don't have the integration set up, go ahead and just give them a call. I've got their contact information up here. I've got their support number on the website. Go ahead and give them a call. Let them know, hey, I'm using IconCMO. They're going to have a sort of a waiver or release form for you to sign, and then they'll send us the credentials to hook up the integration so that you can go ahead and import those transactions manually. Import them instead of typing them in manually. It makes it nice because it's less workload for you to enter into the system, and then also helps catch errors as well, because there's no risk of transposing a number, miskeying something, or anything like that. Other integrations that we have are going to be down here. So if we go in the menu under Web Services and then to the App Market, this is a list of all of our partners and integrations. So there might be something here that you didn't know was available. So it's nice to scroll through and see if there's anything that's helpful. Secure Search Space offers background checks. That one's really cool. We'll actually send information from the Icon record to secure search so that you can run background checks on them. And if you come here and click on any of these, it'll have links to their websites. So you can learn more information and contact them about their products and services, because most of these integrations will have different plans and different pricing depending on what services you need in there. Other popular ones, again, we talked about Vanco. That's one of our online donations. Constant Contact is another popular one that we usually set up right away for people. So again, we talked about this. You can send emails directly out of Icon. They're plain text emails to either groups or to individuals. But a lot of our customers like to use Constant Contact. They have those fancy newsletter templates, right? So you can line it up with the pictures and the backgrounds and be able to track who opened an email and schedule them for the future, see if somebody actually clicked the link and things like that. So if you have a Constant Contact account set up, you can export your group list into Constant Contact. So this is where you would come to set up that integration. And then Bambora, we talked about that one, is the online donations. And then IconCMO as well is another one of the really popular ones for voice broadcasting and text messaging. And we just did a webinar with that. So if you missed it, go to our YouTube channel and watch the webinar with IconCMO, because that is a really cool integration. They will actually take your phone list from IconCMO and they can send out text messages to those cell phones, and then voice messages. You pre-record a voice message and it'll send it out to the landline. All right, so we're doing pretty good on time here. I want to cover a couple things about billing, just to make sure that everybody knows how the accounts work for billing, and then we'll open it up to questions. So how billing works in the system is, here's my pricing calculator, is the base price of the database is going to be based on how many families you have in your account. And so the tiers start at 1 to 100 families, which is $35 a month. And this is just on our website too. So if you're ever curious to come look at these, you can go to IconCMO.com, click on products, you'll get to this pricing calculator. So it goes from 1 to 100 families all the way up to 3,000 and plus. We also have an extension of IconCMO called IconCMO Plus, which is available for churches with multiple campuses that are tracking the book separately, or even denominational headquarters. They can get roll-up reporting on all of the churches underneath them. So you can check on that there. And then there's different add-on modules that you can add on to your account as well. So Icon Check-in, that's for checking the kids in and out. If you've got like a Sunday school, preschool, daycare, something like that, where it'll print out the label with the kid's name, allergies, emergency contact information, and then the parent or guardian will get a label with the same code on it. It's kind of like a coat check, and then they can bring that back so you can verify that it is the appropriate person dropping off and picking up the kid. And then payroll module, that's a do-it-yourself payroll module. Again, we're going to be doing a payroll webinar later this fall. If you want to join in on that, we'll be sending out the registration link at some point. And then event registration is another module that you can add on. And that is for people to sign up for events like fundraisers, concerts, retreats, anything like that. You can either have free events set up just so that you can track who's coming and track your registrations. You can also, if you have it set up with the Bambora account, you can take payments online for those registrations. So if they need to pay tuition or pay for books or t-shirts or anything like that, they can go ahead and pay online. So the big question then is, if you're billed based on how many families are in the database, how do you know how many families are in the database? So that's what I want to show you. On your menu, if we go to the People tab, and if you're brand new to the system, just take notes here. If you're familiar, you probably know where all of the reporting is already, but this is a good one to write down to track this for. So you can go to the People tab on your menu, And under the members subheading, we're going to our member reports window. So people, members, member reports. And if you scroll down, they're in alphabetical order. There is a report called status, tally by status code. Oh, I'm sorry. Back up. We want to go to our household reports. That one's also useful if you want to know the member status tally. All right, let me start over taking notes. Scratch it out. This is why live webinars are fun, because I get to mess up and edit it later. People, households, household reports, and there's one called status tally. And so your status tally report, there's no parameters on this report or settings or anything like that. So you just click show report and it'll pop up on your screen. I'll zoom in here a little bit so that you can see it better. So what this one does is it shows you your total household count at the bottom. I've got 444, but it also breaks it down by status code. So you can see, and the status codes are going to be a little bit unique per church as well. We throw a handful of defaults in there, like active, inactive, visitor, that sort of a thing. But each church and each denomination uses a little bit different terminology. So your list is probably going to look different from this, and it'll be customized with your own statuses. But it's easy to come in here and see how many active families you have versus inactive versus visitors, that sort of a thing, so that you can see the breakdown. Now, the cool part is that there's an archive section in the database. And so if there is anybody that, say, passed away or moved away, or maybe they visited a church once or twice and you haven't heard from them in a really long time, you can go ahead and archive those households. And that way they're still, if I go back to my menu, I can still go under people, members to my archive, and I still have all of those names in here, and I can click on them. I can see all of their demographic information that I had saved for them, but they don't show in my regular household list or member list. They don't show in any of my reports. They're not getting a contribution statement because they're not donating. So it keeps your database nice and clean without having to actually delete that information and lose it. And then if somebody does happen to move back to town, or a visitor that showed up again, all you have to do is click on archive button and it'll pop them back over to your main database. So it works on two levels. It keeps your billing count down for Icon, but it also keeps your reports in your database clean. All right, so on that note, I'm gonna take a big drink of water because my throat is getting scratchy. And then if you have any questions that you wanna go ahead and cover, feel free to type them into the question box. And I see that there's already been some questions coming in, so I'm gonna start going through those. I don't see any questions coming in. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hang on for a couple more minutes just to make sure that nobody's typing and get their questions through. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap up the webinar. So either that or maybe everybody's asleep. Maybe I was really boring. But thank you all for being here today. I do want to finish off. I'm going to pull up the Icon System Support website. So if you are, when you're logged in, if you go to this help button at the top right corner here, it has our, let's say I left it, the support team email, and then our phone number as well. And that is a direct line to our office, to our support team. We are in the office from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Time on weekdays, Monday through Friday. We usually try to send out a heads up if we're going to be closed due to like a weather cancellation. We're in Minnesota, so we get weather cancellations in the winter, or if there's a holiday or something like that, we usually try to give you a heads up so that you have notice. But you're welcome to call or email us if you have any questions on anything too. So let me bring this up on our website. There we go. Okay, so that is our contact information at the bottom here. Oh, we got questions coming in. All right, let's go through some questions. Can you archive in different categories? Bob, I'm not 100% sure what you mean by that. Like, are you talking about archiving an entire status code? If you want, I think this is what you're asking. Let me flip back to my report here. So like, if you wanted, you could email our support team and say, okay, I need to do a major cleanup of my database. So anybody that's marked as delete, inactive, or non-member, go ahead and archive them, and we can do that for you. And we'll get that in one swoop. Oh, I just saw you typed in. Deceased versus visitors versus inactive. Yeah, so it'll save these status codes on their archive, so you'll still be able to see, and even when you archive somebody, let me actually walk through that so that you can see. So like if we had a household, I got my question box in the way. If we had a household that needed to get archived, we would just come here and pull up their record and click on the delete or archive button. And it will let you know the last time that they donated. This was last year, so presumably they already received their statement for 2018, so we don't need to worry about that. I'll click OK. And then we do want to archive them. The only time I don't recommend archiving them is if you have a duplicate record in the system. You just want to delete the duplicate. Any other time, it's pretty safe to just archive. It's better to have a little bit too much information than to accidentally delete something you might need later. And then you'll be able to type in a reason why you're archiving them. So this is where you can put like transferred to another church or passed away or moved away or things like that. So when you go to their archive record, you're going to be able to see, or if you go to your archive reports as well, you'll be able to see that comment about why they were archived too. So not only will you have access to the status code up at the top to see whether they were inactive, active, that sort of a thing, you'll be able to see special dates if they did have a deceased date, or some churches will do like a transfer out date as well, and specify which church that they transferred to if they went to another church, and then the comment. So you'll have multiple places to track all of that information. Are deceased people automatically put into the archive? No, they are not. So there's a couple different things. First of all, one of the big questions is if they were the last surviving person in their household, or if they had a surviving spouse, or something like that, they're going to be handled a little bit differently. So if it was the last surviving person in the household, you would actually go through these steps that I just did with this record here for Shannon. The only thing is if they did have donations in the current year, you'd want to make sure to run off their statement first. I recommend printing off 2 copies, one to send to the estate right away, and one to just keep a file in your file cabinet, just in case the family, comes to tax season and they're like, hey, I was really busy, I misplaced a statement. You can just grab that extra copy and hand it over to them, or drop it in the mail. You can always go back and get a copy of that statement out of the system. It's just a couple extra steps once they've been already archived. So it's, like I said, it's easier to just print off 2 copies right away and send one off and keep one on file. Some churches, however, will, they have to do year-end reporting to the denominational headquarters about how many people passed away, or, attendance counts and things like that. So in those cases, they won't archive somebody right away when they passed away. They wait till the end of the year. So that's why it's up to the church, depending on if you can archive them right away, or if you need to wait until in January or whenever you finish your year-end reporting. But you can always make sure to record the special date, record the deceased date in there so you know they are deceased. And then if you want to change their status code to inactive or deceased or something like that to further filter them out, you can do that too. Can we go over directory information? We're going to cover a lot of that in the webinar next month in membership, because we've got online directories, print directories, that sort of a thing. So if you can't wait until then, Tracy, go ahead and just give us a call. It should only take a couple of minutes, but we can show you where all the different directory resources are and find one that's going to work for you. How do you print mailing labels? All right, we're going to cover that in the next webinar too, but I'll give you that one because that's that's a really common question for new people in the system. So I think it'll be helpful for a lot of people here. So mailing labels, you can go to any reports window in the system. Well, not any, because like general ledger is not going to have mailing labels, but in your people and contributions modules. So for example, households. If you're generally going to want to send mailing labels to at the household level, so that it's one per family, but there might be situations where you're sending it to individuals too. And so the key here is, so if I pull up my reports window, this is a list of all the different reports we can run for households. And this is where we were before we found that status tally report, right? So this should look familiar. Now the key is there's a labels tab or a column right here. And some of them have a check mark in that column. So what we can do is, here's just our basic household list, right? So if I click on household list, I can choose my status codes. I can either choose one status code, I can choose everyone, or if I hold down the control key on Windows, command on a Mac, I can pick and choose multiple status codes to include on that. And then I can also choose my sorting, things like that. Now, if I just click show report, it's going to give me my PDF list of all of those households with their contact information. But since this one has a check mark in that labels column, we know that we can also get our mailing labels. So all I need to do is go to the bottom and choose PDF report and switch it to PDF labels. I can choose my label type. 3 across is the most common. You can do 1, 2, or 3 across. Every time I go to the office supply store, they're sold out because everybody else uses them. So I have to make sure I plan ahead and order them online. And then this is everybody's favorite when I do webinars. So last time I printed labels, I was just doing some testing on the system, and I printed out 1 mailing label. And so now I have an almost entirely unused sheet of labels sitting on my desk waiting for next time. And so next time, I've got this handy little label position selector here. I can skip over that first one and start on the second one, and then finish off my sheet of labels. And so same steps. You can go in any of the reporting windows in the people or the contributions module, and the ones that have check marks, you'll be able to print your mailing labels off of. And there's other formats in there too. So like you could do Excel. I'm not going to show you that one because it's going to mess up my screen sharing again. And then there's also HTML, and that one's a good format that is similar to the Excel table formatting, but it's good if you want to copy and paste it. Like, I don't know if you've ever tried to copy and paste a PDF document like this in a Microsoft Word or something like that. It just really, really doesn't work that well. So the HTML is good if you want to copy and paste it. It'll keep that formatting if you're putting, you know, maybe a birthday list in or anniversaries in a newsletter or bulletin or something like that. All right, more questions. I don't have access to AR or AP. How do I get access? If you do not have access to those system security windows, the fund accounting one, to give yourself access, then talk to your administrator. They'll be able to give you access. If they don't know how to do it, have them give us a call and we'll just walk them through it. It should be a pretty easy thing. Oh, yay, Christy says, yay, Minnesota, me too. It's finally spring up here. I've been talking to customers down in Florida and Arizona all winter, and they're talking about how warm it is. Contribution reports, yeah, we're going to talk about those coming up in July. So we'll go through some of the reporting then. If you need anything in the meantime, again, just call our support team and let us know what you're looking for, and we'll help you out. Can you tell who made member changes in a household file? As far as audit trails go on the financial side, we track very specifically who made what entries and when. On the membership side, we don't worry about it too much. Maybe there's a rogue volunteer that will delete things. I don't know what the situation would be. In those cases, we have backups. You're not going to lose your data or anything like that. But you can. So what we do track is the date that the record was last updated. And then there also is a report. You can't see it on here, but there is an Excel file you can pull that says when the record was added into the system and by which user. So you can always see, you can tell how old the record is, how long it's been in the system. But this last updated data is helpful because then at least this hasn't been updated for 3 years or however long. Maybe you want to double check that it's accurate before, sending out a mailing to them or something like that. So yeah, we don't track too specifically in the membership module about who did what, but you will be able to see when it was last updated. And another thing that sometimes people use is the status date. It'll automatically get populated with the date that a record was added. But if you want to use that for like when a record was updated or when their status was changed, different churches use it for different things. It's kind of a flexible thing in the system. The important thing is that you're using it consistently and everybody in the church is using it for the same thing so that you can get helpful reporting using that status date. Okay, reading through more questions. Oh, okay. So people are asking about how to update the status codes. We talked about that, but we didn't. I think we should have time for this one last thing before we wrap it up. So these status codes in the system, I showed you those on the status tally report. For some reason, the drop-downs don't like showing on the GoToWebinar system. So, but when I click on this active, I've got different options that I can choose from. And so basically any of these, like if I go over the member record here, like relationship, gender, status code, over on the right-hand side, you've got denomination, language, ethnic origin, special event, all of those sorts of things. If we go to our organization and then under preferences, church membership, close out these extra windows. You can, again, we throw like a handful of defaults in there so that you can jump in the system and get started right away, but you can customize those. So up at the top, modify contents of a drop-down list. It gets kind of meta here because this is a drop-down list of drop-down lists in the system, right? So if I choose status code, I can either add a new entry. So if there was a status code that I wanted that wasn't in the list, I could go ahead and add it in there and save it. Or if there's an existing one, like let's say, staff. If I wanted to change staff to employees, I could do that and modify it. Or you can also delete a status code if there's something in there that you're not using, and adjust it there. So yeah, all of those things I covered. Again, relationship, denomination, languages, countries, ethnic origin, occupation, gender, those all can be edited under here. Underneath, there's a button here, maintain phone email types. Those are there, and then the special events. So like the birthday, by default, I believe there's birthday, marriage anniversary, deceased date, baptism. I think those are the defaults, but you can add whatever ones you want, just right in here. And then there's up to 6 user-defined fields in here. So if you have extra information like sponsors or pastors or churches or anything like that, you can add more information. Yes, so we will be, I'm going to wrap it up here because we've only got a couple minutes left. We will be sending out, I don't know when it's scheduled for yet, but we will be sending out an email soon with a list of the upcoming webinars and then a link to register for them so that you can go ahead and get those dates on your calendar. I think just off the top of my head, it's going to be the first Tuesday of the month at 2 p.m. Central, so same time as today's. And then, yeah, we'll send out the registration link so that you get those. If it's not this week, then it should be next week coming up here. All right. Well, thank you all for attending the webinar today. I know there was a couple of questions that I didn't get to, so again, I'll follow up with an email. And again, if you have any other questions, I'll put our phone number here as we wrap it up so that you can grab that off the screen. In the bottom right corner, we've got our tech support phone number and email address. Feel free to let us know. And I hope you all have a good rest of your day. We'll talk to you later.